On the night of December 30, 2000, a quiet neighborhood in Tokyo became the scene of one of Japan's most haunting unsolved crimes. A family of 4 was murdered inside their own home, yet what made the case truly extraordinary was not only the brutality of the attack, it was what happened afterward. The killer did not flee immediately. Instead, investigators concluded that the intruder remained inside the house for several hours, leaving behind an unprecedented amount of forensic evidence. More than 2 decades later, despite thousands of leads and one of the largest investigations in Japanese history, no one has been identified. The victims were 44-year-old Mikio Miyazawa, his 41-year-old wife Yosuko, their 8-year-old daughter Nina, and their 6-year-old son Rei. The family lived in the Setagaya district of Tokyo, an area that had gradually become quieter as nearby land was being redeveloped. Their home stood near a small park, with only a handful of neighboring houses remaining. The Miyazawas spent December 30th like many families preparing for the New Year holiday. Nothing appeared unusual. They visited relatives, returned home that evening, and settled in for the night. Sometime before midnight, someone entered the property. Investigators believe the intruder accessed the house by climbing a tree next to the residence and entering through a second-floor bathroom window. The screen had been removed, providing what police believe was the point of entry. Inside, Mikio encountered the intruder first. A violent struggle followed. Evidence suggested the attack began on the second floor, before moving downstairs. During the confrontation, the blade of the attacker's knife reportedly broke. The intruder then retrieved another knife from the family's own kitchen and continued the assault. One by one, each family member was killed. The attack was swift but violent, leaving investigators with a complex crime scene that would take months to examine. What happened next transformed the case from a tragic homicide into one of the most baffling investigations in modern criminal history. Rather than escaping immediately, the killer appeared to remain inside the home for several hours. Investigators found evidence that the intruder had used the family's bathroom and first aid supplies. Food from the family's refrigerator had been eaten, and containers of ice cream and bolly tea had been consumed. The attacker also used the family's computer, though only briefly, and left behind numerous personal belongings. Among the items recovered were articles of clothing, including a jacket, scarf, hat, and gloves. Investigators also recovered fingerprints, shoe impressions, blood samples, and DNA. The amount of evidence left behind was remarkable. In many homicide investigations, offenders take great care to avoid leaving traces of their identity. In Setagaya, the opposite appeared to have happened. Forensic experts determined that some of the blood found at the scene belonged not only to the victims, but also to the killer, who had apparently been injured during the struggle with Mikio. This provided investigators with a complete DNA profile of the unknown suspect. The clothing left behind offered additional clues. The garments were traced to manufacturers, while the shoes were identified as a relatively uncommon brand sold in limited quantities. Soil particles found inside the suspect's belongings were analyzed, leading investigators to believe the individual may have spent time in specific regions outside Tokyo. The investigation grew rapidly. More than 280,000 officers have reportedly been involved over the years. Investigators conducted interviews with tens of thousands of people and collected DNA samples from numerous individuals connected to the case. Every significant lead was carefully examined. Police also released information suggesting that the suspect may have been a young adult male. Analysis of the DNA indicated possible maternal ancestry common in East Asia, while other genetic markers suggested mixed heritage. However, investigators emphasized that these findings could not identify any individual and should not be viewed as definitive evidence of nationality or identity. Despite the enormous amount of forensic material, no suspect has ever been charged. Over the years, investigators pursued countless theories. Some believed the attack was targeted because of the level of violence directed toward the family. Others suggested it may have been a burglary that escalated unexpectedly. Still others questioned whether the offender had any previous connection to the neighborhood. None of these theories has been proven. Japanese police continue to revisit the evidence, using advances in forensic science. Modern DNA analysis, digital reconstruction, and improved investigative techniques have all been applied to the case. New tips are still accepted, and the Metropolitan Police Department periodically renews public appeals for information. Today, the Miyazawa home no longer stands. The property has since been redeveloped, but the memory of what happened there remains deeply rooted in Japan's criminal history. The Setagaya family murders are often remembered not because investigators lacked evidence, but because they had so much of it. The killer left fingerprints, DNA, clothing, personal items, and a detailed timeline of movements inside the house. Yet none of it has been enough to reveal a name. More than 20 years later, the case remains open. It serves as a reminder that even the most advanced forensic science cannot always solve every mystery. Somewhere, the person responsible for the deaths of the Miyazawa family has never been held accountable, leaving behind one of the most perplexing unsolved cases in modern history.